the young and the restless spoiler's shock. The tension between Jack Abbott and his son, Kyle Abbott, had been building for weeks. Ever since Kyle had accepted the CEO position at Glissade, a rival company, Jack had felt a void growing between them. Despite the love they shared, Jack couldn't stand the thought of Kyle steering a competitor, especially when Jack had long hoped that Kyle would one day take the reins of Jabot, the family business. Kyle, on the other hand, was riding high on the success of his new role at Glissade. The opportunity to lead a company on his own terms filled him with excitement and ambition. He was finally stepping out of Jack's shadow, proving to himself and the world that he had the skills to run a business. But Jack couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Kyle was making a mistake that might pull him away from the family for good. Together with Diane Jenkins, Jack had hatched a plan. It was risky, dangerous even, but in their minds, it was the only way to pull Kyle back to Jabot. They both knew one thing for sure: Kyle's love for his family, especially for Jack, was deep and unwavering. No matter what happened, Kyle always put family first. And that was exactly what Jack intended to exploit. The plan was set in motion quietly. Jack would pretend to be sick, gravely sick. He would fake a cancer diagnosis, something that no one, least of all Kyle, would question. Jack and Diane knew that if Kyle believed his father was dying, he would drop everything, including his position at Glissade, and return to Genoa City to be by his father's side. From there, Jack would gradually groom Kyle to take over at Jabot, ensuring the company stayed within the family. It was an intricate deception, one that required precision and emotional control. Diane played her part flawlessly, supporting Jack's every word with her own tears and heartfelt concern for his health. They practiced their lines, their expressions, their body language, everything had to be perfect. Jack knew this was his last chance to bring Kyle back, and he couldn't afford to make a mistake. The first time Jack mentioned his illness to Kyle, it was over a quiet dinner. The room was dimly lit, and the weight of Jack's fabricated confession hung in the air like a dark cloud. "Kyle," Jack began, his voice low and filled with false gravity. "I didn't want to worry you, but the truth is, I've been seeing doctors recently. They've found something. Cancer. It's advanced." Kyle froze, the words hitting him like a freight train. He stared at his father in shock, his mind racing. "Cancer," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, no. This can't be happening." Jack nodded slowly, playing the role of a man resigned to his fate. "It's happening, son. And I don't have much time. That's why I need you now, more than ever." The expression on Kyle's face was heartbreaking. He was a man torn between his own ambitions and his love for his father. Jack knew this was the moment. He had Kyle right where he needed him. "I want you to come back to Jabot," Jack continued, his voice filled with false sincerity. "I need you here, with me. There's so much I haven't taught you yet, so much I want you to know about running the company. I can't leave Jabot in anyone else's hands. You're the only one I trust." Kyle hesitated, glancing down at his hands, which had suddenly started trembling. His mind was racing. He had just started his new role at Glissade, his first real chance to prove himself away from his father's influence. But this? His father was dying. Could he really turn his back on Jack now, when he needed him the most? "Dad, Kyle's voice cracked, and he struggled to find the words. "Of course, I'll come back. I'll be there for you." Relief washed over Jack, though he did his best to hide it. The plan was working. Kyle would return to Jabot, and over time, Jack would slowly hand over control of the company. Everything was falling into place. But it wasn't long before Victor Newman, Jack's longtime rival and the sharpest businessman in Genoa City, caught wind of what was happening. Victor had always prided himself on seeing through deception, and he wasn't convinced by Jack's sudden illness. Something didn't sit right with him. He suspected there was more to Jack's cancer than met the eye, but even with his suspicions, Victor knew there was little he could do to stop it. Kyle loved his father, and no amount of warning from Victor would change that. Still, Victor couldn't help but smirk, knowing that this charade would only work for so long. As the days passed, Kyle grew closer to his father, spending more time at Jabot and less at Glissade. He was slowly being pulled back into the Abbott fold, just as Jack had hoped. But the weight of the lie began to wear on Jack and Diane. Every time they saw Kyle, so filled with love and concern, the guilt gnawed at them.